What is up? Welcome back to my channel, Journey to Well. My name's Hannah. I am a holistic business coach empowering entrepreneurs to achieve their version of peak performance using tools like human design, cycle alignment, and somatic breathwork. So today we are talking all about human design energy centers. Okay, so these first two centers, our crown or our head and our ajna or our third eye, are really important to talk about because especially in business, we spend a lot of time working on our mindset. We spend a lot of time thinking and living in our heads. And part of my business model, part of what I coach is a lot of somatic work, which is getting into our bodies. So one of the things that I always tell my clients when we start learning the human design centers is we only have 2 energy centers in our head. We have 7 energy centers in our body. So get into the body is a really important tool that we work on and that we're going to talk about in this 4-part series. But we do need to talk about the crown and the ajna. So starting with the crown center, the energy of the crown, which is that top triangle in our human design body graph chart. This is our center of ideas, of inspiration, of mental pressure. We have 2 pressure centers in human design. One is our crown, one is our root. So it's like the lowermost part of our energy centers and the uppermost part of our energy centers. This is our center of thought, of doubt, of confusion. There are shadow sides and light sides of every human design energy center. So the doubt, the confusion, the mental pressure, that might be a little bit more of the shadow side. If we have a open crown center, which, brief reminder, it's not going to be colored in. Whether it has colored in numbers or not doesn't matter for the purposes of this video. If it's undefined or open, we might find ourselves feeling a lot of mental pressure. I myself have an open crown and a defined ajna. So this is such an interesting combination to me personally, probably because it's my design. But having an open crown center, there's always a lot of pressure for me, especially with that defined ajna. There's a lot of pressure for me to figure it out, to come to the conclusion, to process all the information, because that energy from other people, because it's an open center for me, that energy from other people comes in thoughts, ideas, inspiration, and my energy, my unique blueprint wants to process all of that down into the ajna. But some of those thoughts, some of those ideas, some of that doubt, some of that confusion, some of that mental pressure is not mine. And that's where we're having the conversation of defined versus undefined centers. So let's start with defined. If you have a defined crown, if it's colored in, the way in which you get thoughts, you get ideas, you get inspiration is pretty consistent, and you have pretty consistent access to the way in which you think. You also have pretty consistent access to what you believe and your belief patterns. So if you have a defined crown and you're a coach, you're a guide, you're a business owner, you have your own business, sharing your perspective and you almost being a sounding board for others and illuminating new perspectives for them is really beneficial, is a gift that you just hold having a defined crown center. Here's one thing that we can be aware of if we have a defined crown is that the way in which you think, the way that you gain inspiration and have thoughts is pretty consistent. So we can be a little bit stubborn in these situations. We can be a little bit like bullheaded when we're processing thoughts, and not when we're processing, that's the ajna, when we're getting thoughts and we're gaining inspiration and the way that which we think and our critical thinking. So being aware of that and being aware of maybe I can entertain this new perspective and at least weigh the options. If you have an undefined center, like I was giving the example of myself having an undefined crown center, that we can feel a lot of mental pressure, a lot of, I don't know what to think. I don't know what my beliefs are, or processing and having those thoughts. I don't know what to think or what to believe. So here are 2 things here are 2 gifts if you have an undefined crown center, is that how we gain inspiration can change. So seeing other people's ideas, for me, one of the best ways that I gain presentation ideas or like marketing ideas or how to share this information is by seeing how other people do it. And then my defined Ajna kind of processes these inspirational ideas and says, yep, this is how you're going to do it. This is not how you're going to do it. Or I love this, but I'm going to change X, Y, and Z because that's going to align more with my unique perspective and the way that I approach things. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so then we immediately move down into the Ajna, which is the processing of these thoughts, this inspiration, these beliefs, this critical way of thinking. So the Ajna is like the interpreter of all the information coming in. So what I want you to imagine with these energy centers, especially the upper energy centers, is this energy flowing down. So the energy comes, the idea, the thought, the inspiration comes down into the crown center, then moves down into the Ajna or the third eye. The visionary moves down for processing and then moves down one more time to the throat center to then be expressed. So those with a defined Ajna, you are here to process information in a consistent way. You have a consistent way in which you process information. You are here to inspire others with your inspiration, with the way that you process your thoughts, your ideas, your thought patterns. Those with an undefined Ajna, you have more of that open concept idea. You might not be someone that has super strong opinions. And in this world, I don't know about you, maybe you feel like you need to be super opinionated. Maybe you feel like you can't be super opinionated. Like, depending on, again, your conditioning, if it's this undefined center, this is a really great opportunity to look at, is it okay for me not to have a strong opinion about everything? Can I be more open? Can I be more flexible? And is that okay? Not having 100% certainty about a topic, about a way in which you present this business idea of yours, not having 100% certainty about something is not a bad thing for our undefined Ajnas. What your gift is you have the ability to see other people's perspectives. You're literally going to get the energy from someone, like if you and I were in a room together, I have a defined Ajna, I'm going to magnify my definedness into your undefined Ajna center. So you're here to magnify my way of processing information, and then you go to the next person and magnify their way of processing information, and then you get these two options that you can play around with and see what you want to use today, and that might change tomorrow or next week or next year. And then we're going to move down one more time into the throat center. Every single center is eventually, its goal is to come out of the throat. So even like our sacral center, right? We're going to get there in part 3 or 4 of this series, but our sacral center is our center of power, of passion. That passion is moving up through the other centers to eventually get expressed out through the throat. Our throat center is the way that we bring our insides out. I like to throw in little intermediate tips. So if this goes over your head, let it go over your head. Come back to this video in a few months. But if you have more intermediate human design knowledge, one tip is to look at your direct channels, which are those colored in lines from energy centers, which simply means that you have a defined gate like in your throat and maybe a defined gate in your spleen. Look at those channels. So if you have a completely colored in line from your spleen to your throat, then the way in which you express the spleen energy, which the spleen energy is instinct, we'll dive deeper into that later, but the way in which you express your instinct, you have a direct connection to, if that makes sense. So that's one intermediate tip. But for now, beginning, the throat is a really great manifestation channel, especially if you have a defined throat. Let's start there. If you have a defined throat, you're a manifesting generator or a manifester. You have a very consistent way in which you communicate. So one of the funniest things for me to do is like go back on my YouTube channel and watch the original videos that I posted and how I'm presenting. Like obviously I was super awkward and the videos are not really well edited and all of that. But the things that I'm talking about, I literally say some of the same exact things that I said 4 years ago today, and I don't even recognize that I'm saying it. But the way in which I communicate is pretty consistent because I have a defined throat center. People with defined throat centers, they also tend to do really well in using their voice in a consistent way. So being a podcast host or having your own YouTube channel or, sharing your voice and sharing your face on social media, you have this voice and you want to share in your specific tone. So if you have an undefined voice, if you have an undefined throat center, the way in which you communicate may change over time. It might change depending on who you hang out with, your verbiage, your words, and the way that you share messages may change over time. And especially depending on who you're spending time with. If you're spending time with, again, someone that has a defined throat center, over time, you may end up communicating more like that person that has a defined throat energy center. I'm thinking right now, like in terms of like business partners. If you have a business partner that has a defined throat and you have an undefined throat, though you might end up communicating and sharing your messages in a very consistent way. Whereas if you were bouncing around between business partners or you didn't have a business partner and you communicated, you worked with this one person one time for a few months and then you worked with another person for a few months and you go back and compare the way in which you communicated, it might look different depending on who you were hanging out with. So the biggest piece that I want to drive home in every single part of this video series is that it's not good or bad. It's not good to have a defined center or an undefined center. Having a defined ajna is better than having an undefined ajna. Nothing is good or bad. We're truly using our energy, what we uniquely possess. If you have, out of these 3 centers, you only have, let's say, a defined throat center, using your voice, dialing into that consistency of how you can share your message, share your story, that's the gift that you uniquely possess. If you have an undefined throat center, the gift that you uniquely possess is being able to share your story in different ways, in different modalities, and different verbiage, right? In different ways of communicating in different ways. Neither of them are good or bad. It just is. And it's learning the defined centers first, learning what we uniquely possess. That's where we can lean in and really find our thing, right? Our flow, that thing that makes you unique, makes you different, makes you powerful and empowered. And then we can look at our undefined centers and be aware of other people's influence on the defined or on the undefined centers. All right, I will see you in part 3. We're going to be talking about our G center, our sacral center, and our ego center. These might be 3 of my most favorite centers, especially when we're talking about business. So make sure to click this next video and I'll see you. Make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss any of these videos. Feel free to check out my podcast, which is also Journey to Well. Feel free to connect with me on Instagram @_Journey to Well. Dive into our community. I am so happy to connect with you. I'll see you in the next video. Be well.